I don't know, I've been using mouse bungees for like 2-3 years, and ever since using them, I just can't stop winning.
When I look around me, all I see is people wanting to buy their way into the game, with their fancy gaming mice and mouse bungees.
You know, they just can't compete with my precise aim. I'm like a god.
All I need is a simple mouse. Simplicity is the key.
Yeah, we'll see about that. The Z9 Neo by Zalman brings all the right features on a budget, with a large windowed side panel, 5 included fans, and an excellent interior layout with super simple cable management. Get it now? Link in description below.
So what's up everybody, Aiden here with Hardware Canucks, and as you might have been able to tell from today's little intro skit, this video will be about mouse bungees. Now there's some differing opinions out there on bungees, as some people think they're obnoxious and really a waste of money, however other people swear by their precision and the consistency they provide to the setup, and the just general reduction of hassle in your setup. We'll be looking at 7 mouse bungees today, and giving a comparison for where best to spend your money. But first, let's go over what a mouse bungee is. Obviously, it's less like this, and more like this. It's a pretty simple concept. The main goal is to keep your mouse cord from getting caught on your desk, and to keep the movement consistent. Usually, the way this is done is by having the cord thread through a rubber guiding arm, keeping it in place. So why would you want this? Well, wireless gaming mice are still a while from being ubiquitous, so in the meantime, we're going to have to deal with cords. If you're wanting to reduce the wear and tear on your cord, a mouse bungee can help. If you're wanting to reduce the fraying and kind of damage from scraping it back and forth, well, a mouse bungee can help. If your cord gets tangled and in the way, a bungee can help. And if you're someone who moves around frequently, especially for LAN gaming tournaments, then keeping your setup consistent is important, and once again, a mouse bungee can help with that. You also sometimes get extra benefits like USB ports, lighting, or some other niche features, which might be compelling. And all of this probably sounds great, but there are some downsides. The price is the biggest. For small luxuries, you'd expect a small price. However, unfortunately, some of the more expensive mouse bungees can range up to $50, although most of them settle around the $20 mark. The other thing to consider for many people is the aesthetics. It might not fit with your setup, and that can be an issue for some people. When you're using the bungee, make sure it's set up properly to allow the cable to reach fully to the edges of the mousepad, and you'll notice in bungees with flexible arms, they'll move with you at the corners to make sure the bungee is relatively aligned so that the movement is even. Now that you know what a bungee is and how to use it, let's jump into the roundup. So today we'll be comparing 7 options, as well as a little DIY solution of my own. Now, there's also some links to purchase or just check up-to-date pricing in the description below. Here are the 7 competitors. The cheapest of the bunch is the basic no-name brand mouse bungee, which you can pick up on Amazon for $8. Stepping up from here is the Cougar Bunker, available for around $17 on Amazon. Then we have the Dust bungee at $20, followed by the Razer Gaming bungee, also at $20. We then have an interesting option with the Bungees Aegis at $26. The Zoe Kamad is in the middle of the pack at $28, but the most expensive on the list is the Xtrafy B1. Coming in at a whopping $50 if you can even get one in the US. So what do we need to look at when comparing bungees? Well, there are 4 criteria: price, effectiveness, appearance, and of course features. So the appearance and feature set will be more subject to each individual's needs, however we can find the best options for certain use cases. So let's do an overview of each bungee, starting with the cheapest of the lot. The design of the El Cheapo bungee is very basic. It has a plastic base with this weird reflective ball, and then the flexible coil for guiding the cable, as well as clips to route it behind the desk. It's not the prettiest of the bunch, but it's fairly unobtrusive, and the price is obviously a selling point for many. However, the effectiveness and feature set of this bungee are really lacking. There's no way to adhere it to your desk, and because it's quite light, it's prone to movement, which is a big no-no for bungees. The arms are too flexible, with very little resistance, which means that it will lean with just the weight of the cable. It doesn't keep the cable off the desk effectively, and doesn't guide it well. When you compare the coils with those on the Razer bungee, its poor performance is apparent. Not much good, and in this case, you do get what you pay for. So let's move on to the Razer bungee, which goes for around $20. It's similar in design to its cheaper counterpart, but the execution is far superior. Its jet black finish is far nicer on the eye, and the more angular approach appeals to my tastes more. The biggest difference is in the performance though. To make up for its lightweight, Razor has anti-slip feet and a weighted base, meaning that it does stay upright unless you're doing massive movements with your mouse. The metallic coil stands are also far better than the no-name brand Amazon Bungee, not only having much more resistance and rebound, but also being more malleable to compensate for cable direction, which is nice. It looks good and is simple and effective, which is hard to beat. But of course Razor isn't the only option. Cougar provides their own solution with the Bunker, which takes a very different design approach. Aesthetically, the Bunker looks really industrial with its visible screws and a slightly military design to fit with the name. Cougar has opted for a rubber arm, which doesn't allow for as much drag-free mouse control when reaching the end of the cable, but gives a good control when it's in the ideal range. Cougar also has the most secure mounting method, with a vacuum suction pad and a locking method. Even though the bungee is very light at under 100 grams, once you lock it down, you will not be able to remove it. It's insanely strong, and you could probably lift light desks before you could remove this. The orange Cougar logo isn't my favourite, but if you like that and the design philosophy, at around $17, Cougar has brought a pretty solid offering. Dust Keyboard is up next with their own gaming gear bungee. It takes an interesting approach, kind of merging the Razor bungee and the Cougar one into a little bit of an amalgamation. However, it doesn't really succeed on impressing. Visually, some may like it, but personally I find the unnecessary angles and protruding parts clutter the design. Performance is okay, but it's quite light and doesn't have a suction cup or a weighted base, which once again leads to slipping, even if the rubber feet try to prevent it. The arm is alright, but it doesn't allow for heaps of drag-free movement when the cable is tighter, so if you're doing lots of flicks where you're moving long distances, you might have some trouble. Overall, it'll do the job, but at $20 you can probably do better. Now, let's move on to a more feature-rich bungee with the Bungees Aegis. This takes a different approach with a 3-in-1 feature set. Instead of sitting on your desk, this device mounts right to the side of your monitor, and provides not only a bungee, but also 4 USB ports and a headphone holder. It's a cool concept, and it looks like a great value at $26, but I feel the execution is lacking here. Aesthetically, the maroon, red and black doesn't do much for me. The protruding pieces paired with the Bungees branding just makes for an in-your-face appearance, which is an issue as it's prominent on your monitor and a more subtle design would have benefited it. The Aegis mounts using 2 adhesive strips, which were nice and strong at first, but after a couple of reapplications it's worn down and no longer sticks properly. It can't hold my headphones any longer, which is disappointing. It'd be nice if some spare adhesive strips were included. I'm not a fan of the implementation of the USB ports either. Because they're on the rear of the bungee, it's hard to access them, which really defeats the purpose. The performance of the mouse bungee is even worse, as it has no arm or guidance, it only holds the cable. This creates a weird appearance as the cable has to go up quite high, and doesn't allow for any flexibility. Without a flexible arm, it doesn't provide anything better than my DIY option, which I'll come to in a second. Bungees tries to do it all, but fails in most categories. Now for the DIY approach. It's pretty simple, all you have to do is grab some tape, and tape the cord to the side of the monitor. It sounds stupid, but it does work. It keeps your cord from tangling or fraying, and allows you to route it behind your monitor. Obviously it has some key downsides. If you pull too hard, the tape can come out, and because it doesn't have any guiding arm, it might be a bit rigid at the far edges of the mousepad. If you're doing extreme movements and you hit the edge of the mousepad, it's also going to have a hard cutoff due to that lack of flexibility. That being said, it's a pretty decent option considering it's free, and honestly I'd probably recommend it over the $8 Amazon Bungee. It does a pretty similar, if not sometimes better job, and it's free. I'd also recommend it over the Aegis, as you can tape it lower on the monitor, whereas the Aegis has to sit very high, which is, I don't know, it doesn't do a great job for me at least. So, if you're looking for a very cheap solution, try this. If you've got cash to blow though, and you want a more feature-rich option, then there's definitely some good products for you. Now, I'm going to hand it over to Dimitri to check out the Zoe Command and the Xtrafy B1.
Woo, my turn. Thank you, Aiden. So I've been using the Zoe Kamade. Zoe have been purchased by BenQ, so now it's the BenQ Zoe Kamade. I think I'm pronouncing that right. But I've been using this as my primary bungee ever since receiving it with a couple of Zoe mice, and seriously cannot go without it. The base is nicely weighted, but still it can move around if pulled by the cable, so it's a good idea to have the extra cable length available for flicks and such things. The primary stem can be extended to allow more flexibility to absorb by the spring, with this rubber tip holding cables of different thicknesses just fine, although with really thin wires like on this extra fine mouse, it simply pops out if pulled hard enough. The second point of the cable contact is at the back. It's meant to lock the cable to the bungee without affecting user extension of the spring, and it's perfect for thicker cables, but as you can see with slim cables, even from Zoe mice themselves, this lock point is kind of useless as the cable simply just pops out. At 28 bucks though, it's a quality product with appropriate cable flexibility and support. It doesn't look ridiculous, but still a little bit pricey and doesn't work with really thin cables. And a little walk around I found for this locking point at the rear is to put a piece of tape over the cable if it's thin enough and it constantly pops out. This way it's locked to the bungee, as this rubber piece would be able to hold any thin cables just fine, unless you really pull hard on it with like a flick or something, it will pop out. And moving on to the highest price bungee in this roundup is the Xtrfy B1. Just like the Gamdia's bungee, it's also a USB hub. This one also has some unnecessary illumination. The lighting and color scheme follows the yellow branding of NIP, so it looks kind of off in a normal setup, but the aluminum base is quite elegant, so you cannot turn off the lighting. So yeah, if you don't like the yellow, tough luck. The USB ports are at the back to keep the front clean, and they're connected via a mini USB port, and I don't really like the pattern on this braided cable. They should have just kept it black, or something more simple. The main cable stem though is flexible at the top with this small channel to hold the cable, and that needs to be routed through the bottom opening then, which helps to secure the cable to the bungee. Functionally, the B1 is perfect with good flexibility on the rubber, but it is quite large and expensive unless you need a base with extra USB ports. Aiden, back to you for the conclusion.
Thanks for that, Dimitri. Now, that's a lot of info to take in, so let's summarize it. If you're looking to cheap out, don't bother. The $8 bungee isn't going to do much for you, and you're better off with a DIY solution. In the $20 price range, you've got some really solid options, with the standouts being the Razor bungee for its simplicity, and the Cougar bungee for its insanely secure mounting method. Unfortunately, Dust Keyboard's option is lackluster, and the Aegis is downright disappointing. The Xtrfy B1 is in its own class, not only because of its high price, but also its features. The USB hub and lighting is nice, and the build really is in a class of its own. However, I don't think many people should be buying a bungee like this simply because the features that you're paying for are largely unnecessary. The effectiveness of the Razor bungee against the B1 is very similar, so you're paying for looks, build, and features. In the end, it's your needs which determine the right bungee for you, but you can't go wrong with either the offerings from Razor or Cougar, or if you can spend a tad more, then go with Zowie's Command. So, thank you for watching everyone. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and comment down below if you enjoyed this roundup, kind of collaborative video. So, I'm Maiden with Hardware Canucks, make sure to subscribe for more similar content, and we'll see you in the next one.